Good afternoon. I will call this regular meeting of council to order for December 6th, 2022. On this date in 1989, what has become known as the Montreal Massacre was perpetrated at École Polytechnique, leaving 14 women dead, plus the perpetrator, and leaving another 14 injured. In 1991, Parliament declared December 6th as a national day of remembrance and action on violence against women, also known as White Ribbon Day. And so I ask today that we take a moment to honor and respect the 14 women who were the victims of fatal violence that day, and the many, many more who have been victimized both before and since that date, and to recommit ourselves to continuing to take action against violence in all of its forms, and in particular, to continue to take action on violence against women. With that bit of remembrance and respect, I call us back to our agenda for today. Councillors, you have before you a proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? I will add one matter. I am required to head off to Edmonton for council business. I'd like to get away relatively early this afternoon. I propose to leave at about 3 o'clock, and so I'm going to propose that if we are not there yet on the agenda, that I advance item 8, councillors' reports, to about 2:50, so that I can present some reports before I leave to council. But with that acknowledgement, might I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as presented? Councillor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have a series of minutes for approval today. We will start with Legislative Committee meeting minutes from October 4th, 2022, which were overlooked at the previous meeting. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? And if not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the October 4th, 2022 Legislative Committee meeting as presented? Councillor Demota, thank you. All in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We also have Legislative Committee meeting minutes from November 1st, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made with respect to those minutes? If not, I would again look for a motion. Deputy Mayor Hall, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have regular meeting minutes of November 1st, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2022 regular council meeting as presented? Councillor Waxer, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from November 8th, 2022. Again, are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? And if not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the November 8th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Councillor Melnick, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have budget presentation meeting minutes from November 15th and 16th, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Again, if not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the November 15 and 16, 2022 budget presentation meeting minutes as presented? Councillor Keller-Hempy, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We have the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from November 22nd, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? If not, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes of the November 22nd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting as presented? Thank you, Councillor Waxer. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And finally, we have the minutes of the budget presentation meeting of November 29th, 2022. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? And seeing none, may I have a motion, please, that council approve the minutes of the November 29th, 2022 budget presentation meeting as presented? Councillor Demota, thank you. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, correspondence. We have no correspondence for our attention on the listed agenda, and I presume that will remain as such, which takes us to agenda item 5, delegations. And again, there are no delegations on the agenda and no one in the room, which takes us to agenda item 6, new business. We start with 6.1, property assessment services. And Mrs. Malinchuk, will you present that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just bringing a recommendation back to council for the property assessment services that were sent out to Alberta Purchasing Connection, and we received an RFD, or 2 RFDs, and the recommendation is that council enter into a 5-year agreement for assessment services with Accurate Assessment Group for a term from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 28. And furthermore, that council appoint Mr. Troy Bertels of Accurate Assessment Group as the assessor for the municipality of Jasper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Malinchuk. Are there any questions of council for administration? I appreciate that this matter was presented to Committee of the Whole, I think, on November 22nd. So it's a matter with which people will be familiar. If there are no questions, go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Just a quick question about the appointment of Mr. Bertels. I'm sure he's in office that doesn't sound like it's working on it. There it is. His office has many staff who probably do work on our file. Is it necessary to appoint one person as the assessor? And what happens if he's no longer able to perform his duties?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, we are required to appoint the assessor as per the Municipal Government Act. If there was some reason that he was unable to continue performing the services for us, then we would have to appoint someone else from the same group. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other questions for administration with respect to the recommendation? Councillor Demota?
I don't have a question. I'm willing to make the motion if people are ready. Okay, so I move that council enter into a 5-year agreement for assessment services with Accurate Assessment Group Ltd for a term from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2028, and that council appoint Mr. Troy Bertels of Accurate Assessment Group as assessor for the municipality of Jasper.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Demota. Is there any debate on the motion? Councillor Demota.
Well, I just wanted to say that the reason I wanted to make the motion is that we have a long relationship with Mr. Birtles and his company, and I think that over time he's taken the information that's come back towards him, back to his company, and really evolved his service. And I appreciate the recommendation coming from administration. They're comfortable with working with him, and I'm always apprehensive about getting too comfortable with people that provide services for too long. But I found that even from experience on the other side of the fence from council, whenever I've reached out, the information that's been given to me and the help, the service that company provides for the community is really good. So I'm definitely in support of going in this direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to reaffirm what Councillor Demota said. It is great to have a relationship with the company. And when we did go out to the Alberta Publishing Connection or Purchasing Connection to see what was available, see who on the open market would apply to be our assessor, Accurate Assessments did come back as the clear favorite. And so I think we'll be well served, to Councillor Demota's point, by continuing with the same relationship.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Any other comments, observations? Not, I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 6.2, the 2023 budget approval for both operating budget and capital budget. We have two options, although I think that after 3 days of extensive digging into both operating and capital budget, we ought to have nearly exhausted all questions for administration. So we could begin with a motion and then debate that as necessary. But if there are any outstanding questions for administration, now would be the time. Councillor Demota.
Yeah. I appreciate having the opportunity here to ask some questions and hopefully not to extend our deliberations longer than we already have. And I appreciate all the effort that everybody's put in. I have to say, I'd like to congratulate administration and all their managers, the directors and managers and municipality for the work that's gone into the information that's been given to council. And after a long time of being at this table, this is the most comfortable I've been in decision-making process here. 30 hours does seem like a long time in the deliberations that we have, but the information that we had was extensive and it was good. There were good reads and easier to follow, and I think something that is quite deliverable to the community. One thing that I did just want to get clarified, and I don't know if it could be presented to us via the monitor, was just during our deliberations, we were presented with some scenarios on what a percentage increase and what a dollar amount might mean to a resident. And I know that we had some information given to us on the commercial side, but I wanted to see if there was a reflection on that, considering that just over 65% of our our operational contribution comes from the commercial sector, what that means to a commercial business, the average amount. So I believe that Director Malachek has some information that might be helpful to us. And if I'm not asking the right question, then I just wanted to see in relation what a similar scenario might look like for an average commercial business as far as percentage and what the amount might be on their bill.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Demota. Thank you for the question. Yes, so before I don't have anything to put onto the monitor. I'm not connected. Before we had spoken about a average home price being, or assessed value being at 900,000. And that we potentially might be looking at a change of taxes for municipal taxes only in the amount of 4.5%. And this is estimated at this point, being that the assessments will change in the next few months. Given that information, we had that for residential, but we also have the information for commercial. We were looking at a $5 million property assessed value, commercial property. And the change for that would be $2,913 annually. And that's looking at an urban commercial, not the rural. And the change for the municipal residential property at the 900,000 is $105 annually. So I always suggest as well that it's the best way to calculate it is to look at a house by 100,000 and then multiply it, as well as for non-residential, the commercial, take $1 million and multiply it. So, in that being said, for every 100,000 of residential, we'd be looking at about 2 seconds. $11.65 for every $100,000 of assessed residential, and $544 for every $1 million of commercial. And it's just the easiest way to take those mill rates, especially when you get your tax notices, to calculate out what, say, your assessed value is going to change because you're doing improvements or whatnot, to calculate out what it might be showing in taxation going forward.
All right, thank you very much. So just to be clear, when we took the $105, or whether it's $11.65 for the 100,000, that equates to 4.5% on the residential side. Now, because the tax ratio is different on the commercial side, how is that number reflected on the 544 per 100,000 K? Is that still 4.5%, or does that change with the ratio? And I apologize for being naive about it. I had a hard time calculating the number percentage wise.
Your worship, through to Councillor Demota, I'm not naive at all. It's not the easiest thing to calculate out. It is the same percentage, 4.5%. It's actually 4.45. But what it works out to be is that of the entire municipal taxation amount, or you can apply this to the amount that's increasing as well, you'd be looking at 73% is commercial and 27% is residential. So you can take the 10,206,728, multiply it by 73% and 27%, you'll get your figures there, or take the increase on the value that the budget is increasing for the year, and do it on that as well. So it's just basically, it comes down to those numbers because of the assessed values. The assessed values are taken at their rate, normal rate, and then applied a 5 factor for the commercial. And it's somewhat affected as well by the Lake Edith residential, being that they're 0.58%.
Well, I have to say at this stage, like, I know that we've had different presentations before and how it's rolled out, but in the past, when we've looked at the overall requisition, we've looked at that total number. And if you did that this time, it's going to be over 11%, because it's over $1 million change from last year collectively. But I think that, you know, it's better understood by the community when you break it down this way, because our taxes aren't really going up 11%. When you look at what the taxpayer pays from their residential bill, from the municipal portion of the requisition, we're not, that's factoring out the provincial ones we're obligated for. I think it's a better way for people to understand the impact on their own dollars, and I think that it's better received this way. So I appreciate, again, all the work, and thank you for having that information for us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
On this particular line of questioning, Mrs. Melanchuk, I appreciate there are still significant unknowns. The request for decision document before us today speaks about the fact that the approximate taxation impact based on the budget as proposed is based on, well, the line in the request for decision says it's based on estimated 2022 assessment values. But is that just applying 2021 or so the assessment for 2022 was based on a previous year, or it's always a year behind? We get an assessment one year that applies to the next year's taxes. So when I read that line, are you anticipating what the 2022 assessments might be, or have you done that calculation based on the information that we do have, which is the 2021 assessments, which are the foundation of the 2022 taxes?
Thank you for the question, Your Worship. It's actually preliminary 2022 assessed values that I'm working from. There are some changes that will occur from year to year. So renovations, builds, change in market value based on sales. There's changes in the amount of revenue that we might be looking at from various different commercial properties. But I would, you know, there's all sorts of different things that impact the assessed value. I do believe that it'll change. This is not a solid number whatsoever. It's just very preliminary. So I really want to be clear about that, but it is based off the 2022 assessment year.
Well, thank you for that. And I wanted that clarity for the public as well. And this is the best that can be estimated with the information at hand, but there will be some assessment growth with new properties coming on stream, but assessments are always in doubt until we get the assessment, and particularly for non-residential, which is income-based. The previous year was still not up to par, so non-residential properties may in fact still see a decrease in valuation. We don't know where they stand, and residential properties will depend on all sorts of things. So it is nice to have that estimated number, but I'm glad you made it clear that it is not guaranteed in any sense, and everybody should be aware of that. Councillor Demota.
Thank you, and I appreciate again the on your part, Your Worship, the clarification on non-residential. I was using the term commercial, and I'm glad that that was understood. And forgive me for the misnomer there. That was the intended. I forgot to write one number down, and I'm not sure if I asked it through you, Your Worship, to Director Malinchak. We had a number for residential based on the number you gave us on the 900,000, because the annual contribution would be somewhere around $2,900. What was the commercial one for the 5 million? Did we have that number? I just want to channel your inner nerd.
Your worship, through to Councillor Demota, the change in commercial for 5 million.
Well, the change I thought was based on, it was 544 for per 100K, right? I think the number I was looking at, you gave us a number of $2,913, I believe would be a total average for
That is the change
Oh, okay.
from the prior year on urban non-residential.
urban non-residential. Okay. And that translates to 4.5%,
Yes.
4.45.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can work out that. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to note that on the non-residential side, the way, from my understanding, the calculations are made is over a rolling 3-year average, of which 50% of the most recent year, 30% of the second year, 20% of the third year. So there'll be a constant change updating the most current information, but based over the last 3 years as you evaluate the value of a non-residential property.
Thank you. Any other questions for administration? Councillor Melnick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Director Melanchuk, thank you for the updated information. One of the things I noticed, of course, is in the utilities, and we did include $135,000 for the contribution to a regional landfill. That was based on if our other partners were going to also be involved in that over the 2-year program. Have we heard from the other partners as yet? Are all the partners participating in that expansion to the landfill?
Your worship, through to Councillor Melnick, unfortunately, I do not have that information at this moment. I'm not sure if everyone has committed at this time. And we can definitely have further conversations should it be the case that they do not go forward with that.
Are there any other questions for administration regarding either the 2023 operating or capital budgets proposed? If not, I would invite a motion to get us going. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. I would move that council approve the 2023-2025 operating budget as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Did you wish to speak to your motion?
Not yet.
You will be able to close then. Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion? Well, I will speak to it. And I will vote in favor of the motion unless I hear other arguments why I should not. But I am inclined to vote, and recognizing that the motion is with respect to the budget. And we have talked to a large degree about taxes, and of course, the budget impacts taxes. But this is not a vote on taxes directly. This is a vote on the budget. I commend the work that staff has done to consider the needs of the community and the needs of the municipality, particularly looking at capacity requirements internally. And I appreciate that the additional staff component is much beyond what we normally see here. To some extent, it is a repositioning of term positions to full-time positions, but in other cases, it is adding positions. But it is adding positions where our priorities have indicated we need additional capacity. And so although the budget increase is larger than I may have hoped, I appreciate the work that council has done to minimize the downstream impact by allocating funds from the stabilization reserve and from paid parking, which will have the impact of softening the blow. It is significant and it will be with us for years to come in all likelihood. So I am guarded and have been throughout the process about the size of the increase. But I, again, commend staff on the way it's been presented, and I have been convinced that the increases do in fact address in a proper way the priorities that council has determined to be the priorities for the community. And for that reason, I will vote in favor of the motion. Others who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor DeMota.
Well, I appreciate your sentiment, and for anybody that's watched the deliberations prior to today, would understand some of my positioning on matters that I've voted against. I've had one that's changed since then, and that's regarding Oconee, just based on principle, and I know that we've maintained a relationship with Oconee in our student exchange, which I think has gone really well. And of course, that was put on hold for a little while, and hopefully to see it go forward again once the world is healthier and we can make those changes. And also the fact that there is some tourism recognition to help again reignite our relationship with Japan. So I'm moved to keep some of that money there. And for the other items that I spoke against, although I still feel that my opinion is valid to me, it's important to pass a budget, and I don't want to vote against it because of all the work that we've done here. So my positions on those still stand, but overall budget, I'm going to support today.
Thank you, Councillor DeMota. Councillor Keller-Harappy.
I too will support the budget. I think for myself, Councillor DeMota, maybe Councillor Wilson, it's a huge step forward for us. There's a lot of positions in the budget that I support. And I think with our strat plan, it's like the step into the future. I think it's great. Again, mindful to council that next year we still may have to apply some paid parking money in that, because regardless that it's only a 4.5% budget, we all know it's about a $2 million budget, even though it will eventually be the base for the community to pay. I think, we're coming out of COVID, so we still have to be mindful 3 years ahead, but I do support the budget. And I do want to thank staff. It was one of the best budgets that I've ever sat through.
Any other comments, observations, debate? If not, I will call the question. And the motion was that council approve the 2023-2025 operating budget as presented today, but as has been amended over the 30 hours of deliberation that we conducted. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you all for that. Just before I call for the next motion, I didn't want to speak again on the motion because I'd already spoken, but Councillor DeMota, thank you for raising Oconee. And I just thought it was relevant and I forgot to say that in terms of tourism for Jasper, the fact that WestJet yesterday announced direct flights from Calgary to Tokyo is really significant. And so they have done that with the expectation that that market can be revived. And if the province is going after that, then there is a real opportunity, I think, locally to leverage that And so I think it is an opportune time to re-engage with our longstanding friends in Hakone. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. This is slightly out of order, but I did want to speak closed. Just that as a new councillor, this feels like my first budget because, we did a budget last year, but this is the one with our strategic priorities attached to it. And I wanted to thank administration. I'm very proud of this budget.
Might I have a motion with respect to the 2023-2027 capital budget? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I would make the motion that council approve the 2023-2027 capital budget as presented.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilson, do you wish to speak to your motion? Is there any debate on the motion with respect to approving the capital budget? Great, we've debated it at length. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We moved along with rapid speed. Agenda item 7, notices of motion. There are none that have come to my attention, which takes us to councillor reports way before the time I had forecast. Are there any councillor reports? Councillor Keller-Ramsay.
Last week, I spent 2 days at Pyramid Lake with the Evergreen Foundation. We put in place our strat plan for the next 4 years. And just to advise council that this year, for the next 4 years, we'll be concentrating on senior housing and affordable housing.
Thank you for that. Councillor Keller-Ramsay. Councillor Waxer.
Councillor Melnick and I attended last Friday the Community Futures West Yellowhead orientation session and strategic planning, and it was a great day of learning and making new connections with people in the region. I appreciated the opportunity, and I think it was well presented and a very well spent day.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick, did I see your hand?
Okay. I would just support what Councillor Waxer said that in joining her at the board orientation and strategic planning. And I think we can count on Community Futures being strong supporters of not only our community, but the communities in the region. And will help us move forward in the next few years with their ability to help our small businesses.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Other reports? Councillor DeMotor.
Well, we attended the same meeting for the Jasper Partnership Initiative, and I'll let you do cleanup, and I'll just speak to the stuff that I wrote down. You had some items that you brought up at the meeting, so I will just, for the sake of keeping things streamlined for you, I just wanted to say that there's been a move forward from Marvin Basin and some of the hotels in the community and sharing the transportation system to get people up to the ski hill again. So that's been re-engaged and working quite well from what I understand. Reports back from Tourism Jasper is that just from a business review that the revenue from 2023 and going through our peak season was ended up close to expected, but not as low as presumed with the power outage. So even with the warmer months in October really helped out, our businesses in the community. They also said that they've got itself stretched. They were able to stretch their dollars internally to set up offices globally in other areas, which is really helping, our product around the world. And I think that's it. Parks Canada said that they've been working on their focus on human and wildlife engagement and interaction. We've had a lot of close calls this year, and with bears in the community, with trees and stuff like that. They're focusing. They're going to put some more focus on that where they're able to. And then the chamber also spoke to some challenges with the ministerial changes federally and provincially, and they're working on some initiatives that are going to help the community down the road. And I think that's about it from my point of view. I do have some other points here, but those were specifically brought up.
Thank you, Councillor Demota. I wanted this opportunity somewhat desperately to report to council about the trip that Mr. Gibbon and I made to Ottawa for the Travel Industry Association of Canada Congress, which caused us to miss the November 22nd Committee of the Whole meeting. It is the first time that I have attended that conference. I think it's the first time that council has had representation there, so far as I am aware, at least. There had been suggested to us that it would be opportune to attend through our partners at Tourism Jasper, and I will say that it was really worthwhile. It was fantastic to be in the same room for 3 days with tourism operators from the area, from the broader Canadian Rockies and from across Canada. It was really focused on our only industry and therefore really beneficial. The fact that it was held in Ottawa makes it even more productive. So Mr. Gibbon and I, during our time there for the Congress, were able to meet with Parks Canada, Vice President Andrew Campbell and Michaela Kent, specific to our discussions concerning the transfer of land use planning and development. And that has led to an opportunity, which will be coming later this week, to sign off on terms of reference or a memorandum of understanding in that regard. So a really productive use of time. We also had an opportunity to visit with staff at Minister Wasno's office related to tourism generally and federal initiatives that can help both our community and our industry. We met with Senator Sorensen and passed along to her what is happening in our locale, and she obviously continues to have conversations with others who can influence what happens at Jasper. So that was worthwhile. We met with our MP, Mr. Soroka, again to the same effect. And surprisingly, while in Ottawa, we spent a considerable amount of time dealing with our relationship with the province, and meeting with operators, both from Jasper and from the Bow Valley, specific to our ongoing initiative with the province of Alberta to get designation as tourism-based communities and funding flowing from that. And so those were, again, really productive meetings. So time well spent, and I will tell you just very generally and a bit perhaps superficially, but there is a new word, a buzzword in the industry, and potentially a change to something called regenerative tourism rather than sustainable tourism. And you might well ask, what does that mean? And it's a little imprecise still, but it seems to be more of an attitude that regenerative tourism is more about leaving the place better than you found it, whereas sustainability is more linked to no net negative impact. So you don't make it worse, but with this shift, in fact, you make it better. And tourism communities have the opportunity to take the lead with respect to environmental initiatives. So it was really quite exciting to hear that level of discussion. There was a very provocative presentation by a fellow from New Zealand, Rodney Payne, Payne, and you might Google him. Really interesting stuff, but with some caveats. And as a destination tourism community, 80% of greenhouse gases are emitted trying to get to the destination, which is a challenge for us. We can limit the footprint while people are here, but they have to get here, and that's one of the major challenges. But a real opportunity to learn about such things in that environment. So for future years, when the opportunity comes again, I would certainly recommend that councillors take an opportunity to travel to that congress. It really is important for our community and our industry. And don't, excuse me, watching one presentation there, one of the Indigenous businesses highlighted was our own Matricia Brock. So that was good to see at a national level. One other matter not related to that Congress, I have been in continual contact with ATCO as a result of the Chetamon wildfire. They have conducted their own internal review of the fire and the damage and the response through as a consultant. They are compiling their information and have committed to work through Mr. Given to arrange a time to come and speak with council about their debrief. So it's important that the community know that we have not just moved on and forgotten about it, that we will be going back to analyze the fire and in particular the responses to the fire and the power outage. But it takes time to get all the facts together, so that is still unfolding. And that is my report. Councillor Demota.
Well, you're humble in some of your delivery there when you're from your visit in Ottawa. I don't know if the rest of council got to see Senator Sorensen's post on social media, but it's a live recording of her giving a really nice tribute to Richard. Really pumped your tires. I thought you might have been, you know, following a Macy's parade floating so high after that.
Well, thank you for that. We had been invited to the Senate to watch it in session, but without any notice that that was going to happen. That was very kind of Senator Sorensen to give those remarks. Much appreciated. And thank you, Councillor Demota, for mentioning it. If there are no further councillor reports, upcoming events, not on the list is an event on Thursday, I believe at 11 or 11:30. I think you would find it in your inboxes by now, to meet with Parks Canada with respect to the signing of terms of reference or memorandum of understanding. And that is I think at 11 or 11:30 on Thursday. And I would encourage all of the council to be there if possible. The Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce Christmas at Home at Robson House on December 14th, and our own community holiday party at the Activity Center, reviving a long-standing tradition. Are there any other upcoming events not on the list that we ought to be aware of? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. This coming Friday at 6 p.m. actually in this room, the Jasper Community Team Society is hosting a meet and greet as they are looking for new board members. So please share. It's a great society to be part of. So that's this Friday, the 9th at 6 p.m.
Thank you for that. Councillor Melnick?
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of things. One that is nice to see reoccurring again, the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge has invited our seniors out to the lodge tomorrow and hosting a Christmas luncheon, which is was done last year and was met with great response from the seniors coming out of COVID. And I think it's just appropriate to recognize one of the local businesses that's going out of their way to recognize our seniors and work in coordination with the Rotary Club in making sure that it's a festive time for individuals. As well, one thing that I didn't see on here, and I'll mention it, is on Friday as well, the Festival of Trees, being on the museum board. It's one of their major fundraisers. There will be a wine and cheese that evening. And that event continues on until Tuesday the 13th, not the wine and cheese, but the Festival of Trees. And as we had presentation from the museum, it is one of their major fundraisers, which helps them to sustain their operation. So if there is an opportunity to support that, I would encourage council to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Melnick. Any other upcoming events? If not, I would invite a motion to adjourn. Councillor Waxer. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you for those of you who viewed on our platform. And we will have one more, well, two more meetings, I guess, before Christmas. So early yet to extend Christmas greetings, but for everyone, do keep in mind the significance of today as the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Thank you all. We're done for today.